Ready? Go!
So the crucifixion of Jesus is the most well-established fact of ancient antiquity, as stated by 99.9%. I can't even think of a person, a historian, that says the crucifixion of Jesus isn't a fact.
That's right. You can't do it.
And the only people that do say it's a fact is people who believe that Jesus never existed, and people who say that Jesus never existed, they're a fringe minority of a minority which the mainstream doesn't take seriously. My point is that the disciples of Jesus Christ, which your Quran calls Muslims, believed and buried Jesus' dead body in the tomb. So we have attestation by the disciples of Jesus, which your Quran calls good Muslims, that somehow preserved the message of Jesus, which they actually didn't. That's evidence. Evidence number two, we have a parable which even liberal scholars of the Jesus Semna believe is a historical thing, which the Jesus of Nazareth actually quoted. That's the parable of the vineyard, where Jesus says that he will be killed. So Jesus is prophesying his own death. So we have Jesus prophesying his own death. We have the attestation of Jesus' disciples. We have the attestation of Roman historians, of Jewish historians, of Jesus' enemies. Tacitus hated Christians. If he wanted to, he could have shut these pesky Christians up, because Christians in the first century were saying, look, Jesus died for our sins. Tacitus hated Christians, and if he wanted to, he could have said, no, this is actually a lie, which he never says anything, because he knew, as a historian who did his proper historical work, that the death of Jesus is 100% true within a historical context. So the only reason why you reject this is based on a book written 600 years after that time by a man who was, by his own admission, was under a black magic curse which gave him sexual delusions of him having sex with imaginary woman. This is the reason why you reject the crucifixion, because of what that man said.
Okay. Okay. Bismillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. You may begin.
Start? Yeah?
Start.
Go, you go.
Right. So the question was simple. I asked him to make his point, and he gave us 3 evidences historically for the crucifixion. The first he gave was testimony from the disciples. You have no testimony from the disciples, nothing extant to the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd centuries CE. Let me make this point very easily. He claimed that Mark was the scribe of Peter. Who does he get this from? He gets this from Papias or Papias, whatever you want to call him. But Papias also says that Mark was written out of order. You read Mark today, which is the gospel that's out of order? Not the gospel of John? So if your earliest witness is unreliable, then you've proven that he's not trustworthy. Secondly, and I'll mention this point as well, Eusebius in the 4th century says that Papias was confused and got it wrong. So I'm not making that claim. I am not the unreliable one. Eusebius is attesting to Papias being wrong, so your appeal to that early tradition is false. Secondly, you appealed to the vineyard statement, which is an early, creedal statement, right? We know that's false. Let me explain why. That understanding is based on what we call liberal scholarship. Under liberal scholarship, you take a piece of literature and you break it up into authorial profiles. You look for trends in the way that person speaks and writes. So what they have done is they have acknowledged that there were many editors to the text of Paul. And then because there were many editors, they traced the language to be the most primitive in that specific place. So if you're going to argue that this creed or this phrase was early, then you don't understand how philology works. You can argue it's early or later. All the scholars are saying, the philologists, is that it's different from the normal authorial profile of Paul, so they cannot determine where or when it was written. The only criteria they used to say it was early was because of the primitive language, but that does not necessitate that it is early. Anyway, the Jewish historians don't matter. Tacitus 9th century, Josephus 11th and 13th. Just read the manuscripts and you'll see yourself.
Professor, this is absolutely ridiculous. He's conflating when the manuscripts come from to when they actually wrote it. Yes, we may have manuscripts of Tacitus in the 9th century, but that doesn't mean it wasn't written in the 1st century AD. And this is what you're confusing. All biblical historians on the planet today believe all 4 of the Gospels were written between 30 to 60 years after the time of Jesus. And according to scholars like Professor Richard Bauckham, the Mark's Gospel was based on Peter's testimony. Peter was a disciple of Jesus. The book of Galatians, which no historian, well, not that I know of, even Bart Ehrman accepts, Galatians chapter 1 verse 18 is an authentic passage of Paul, and Paul is saying that he met the disciples of Jesus that acquainted with him knowledge and told them that Jesus was crucified. So the disciples believed in Jesus' literal crucifixion. The only people who denied Jesus' crucifixion in the 1st century AD was someone who called the Gnostics. The Gnostics believed that Jesus couldn't die because he didn't have a physical body, so you can't kill something that's not physical. Jesus couldn't eat, Jesus couldn't sleep, and these are the people that believe that Jesus didn't die. But apart from that, the mainstream believe that Jesus did die on the cross. The parable of the vineyard, again, it's an interesting passage, and even liberal scholars say this is something which Jesus actually said. Also, we have Papias of Hierapolis, which he quoted. Why should we doubt any? Please bring me your source where Papias lied or something. I don't know what you're on about, but Papias met John the Elder, who knew the disciples of Jesus. So we have a chain of transmission from Papias that goes to Jesus' disciples. We also have the testimony of Polycarp, who knew John. We also know the testimony of Ignatius of Antioch. Both Ignatius of Antioch and Polycarp were students of the Apostle John, and they both believe in Jesus' crucifixion.
That was it?
How many guys got anything left?
No, that's it? Okay. 2 seconds. Right, I think you said what, Polycarp was a student of John?
Yes.
Okay, Polycarp's. I'm just writing it down because I don't want to get off track, right? Of John. Alright, I think it was 339. You asked me for my source, so I haven't begun, I'm just clarifying, right? 339.
What's that thing about Eusebius you said?
I'll get to it. I'm getting it now for you. I got it from, what's it? Chapter 339. Section page. I want to be fair to him, so I'm going to give it to him, you know what I mean? I'll find page 39. Okay.
Now let me tell you what immortal is. Immortal is someone who never ever dies. Either physically, spiritually, whatever you want. In any way, that can only be God Almighty. The difference between
Right, 39. Okay, alright, give me 1 sec. 1 sec.
If you find the reference, and when you quote it, you start, yeah?
regardless of whether his soul lives on or not, we still consider
Okay, you may begin. 1 sec.
Tell him when you're ready.
1 sec. I just want to be fair, I'm going to give you the exact quote, right?
You ready?
1 sec.
Let him get the quote.
Yeah, I don't want to be unfair. Hold on, 1 sec.
Can I just say I've got a bus that I need to catch soon to the north.
Okay, no problem. Okay, all right. So I'll quote the reference after. Let me get to your points, right? So your point said is, you may begin.
Ready?
Yeah, you may begin. Right. So his first point was Galatians 1:18 is authentic. Again, I bring you back to, I'm not asking you for the conclusions of others, right? Because if we were just to adopt the conclusions of others, then the earth is flat and the sun is inside the dome. I'm not going to do that, right? What is upon us is that we must judge the evidence that lead to the conclusions. We are not a people just to take conclusions. So I'm putting it towards you. The philologists say because the text is different from the normal Pauline style of writing, it means that it's from a different author. So you have to make a concession here. Philologist. You said Galatians 1:18 and the other one that you mentioned as well with the creed. I'll get to the Vineyard Creed, right? So I'm putting it forward to you. If you're going to accept the conclusions of the philologist,
Padre's calling you.
right. If you're going to accept the conclusions of the philologist, then you must accept the presumption of the science, which is that the New Testament books weren't written by one author but multiple anonymous editors. So if you're going to appeal to that, then you need to follow through on your argument. Secondly, you said I conflated the date of the extant manuscripts with original authorship, referring to Tacitus and Josephus. No, I didn't expand my argument fully, but it's simple. You can't appeal to, I never said it wasn't a first century work, but I'm saying to you the version that exists today is from 900 years later. You said earlier to Mansur, how can you accept the Quran 600 years later? But you wouldn't accept Tacitus from 900 years later. Same thing with Josephus, 11th and 13th century. You said that, Tacitus would have written things against the Christians. We don't know what he originally transmitted.
30 seconds.
Yeah, you don't know what he originally transmitted. So textual criticism needs to be done to that. And in any case, the end conclusion will be a notarial proof that's hypothetical. Lastly, you said Polycarp was a student of John. How we know this is false is that Polycarp never once quotes the Gospel of John, and he never says which John he met. He just said he met a John. It could be John the Presbyter, it could be John the Elder, John of Patmos. We don't actually know historically. That's it?
Yeah, exactly.
Can I have 2 seconds just to look at some stuff?
Yeah, give him time.
Yeah.
2 seconds, Rob. Go.
No, he's joking, he's joking. Yeah, I didn't give him the Eusebius reference, so give me a sec.
I can't remember what he said now.
That's what I was writing down.
Just remind me what you said, just a quick summary. Sorry, I've had a long
okay, yeah, you're wrong. I'm joking. Right, so I told you if you're going to accept the conclusions of philology, then you need to understand how the science works and what it actually states. Right, the other thing was conflating Tacitus and Josephus' original writing date. And the last one was...
Which John?
Yeah, which John he actually says he knew. And yeah, I think that was it, yeah. Did I leave out anything?
Those were the 3 points you made.
Yeah.
Polycarp.
Man, 2 minutes is so short.
Yeah, so extend it to more longer. So
no, he has a bus to go. I'm not going to keep him here. But
so he's making this sound like...
Are you going?
Yeah, go.
So he's making it sound like that because we have later manuscripts that we can't possibly know what the earlier ones is. According to actual textual critics like Professor Craig L. Blomberg, we can accurately reconstruct the entirety of a New Testament with a 99% accuracy. Also, in a past few videos, he said that the title, the inscription of Matthew was added later on, because in the 2nd century there was no title, but further on there were titles saying Evangelion or Matteo. But that's not true. We have a flyleaf that has this that comes from the 2nd century AD. And so again, that's not true. We also have, and he says, Justin Martyr talks about the memoirs of the Apostle John. Justin Martyr was a disciple of the Apostle John, and he believed that in the crucifixion. Then what else? My mouth is dry.
First John.
Polycarp and John.
Polycarp.
Which John?
Which John?
Polycarp does identify, as far as I think, I'll have to get the quote, but he does identify the John as a disciple, and I'm pretty sure of that. I just need
he doesn't.
to get some evidence.
I looked at the Greek myself.
For the next one, I'm actually...
John,
yeah, Galatians chapter 1. How long do I have?
30 seconds.
Okay. Professor Bart Ehrman, in his debate against Robert Price, a well-known mysticist, quoted Galatians chapter 1:18, and he believed in its authenticity, that the Apostle Paul knew the disciples of Jesus that knew the crucifixion of Jesus. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, according to biblical scholars, does not originate from the Apostle Paul because the language is different. Rather, this was an oral creed that was given to him, and he's passing it down in paper form. And the 2 disciples that are named in that is Peter and James. So Peter and James believed in the crucifixion.
Time.
Okay.
Okay, you may begin. Right, so you made a mistake again. Dr. Simon Gatacol did redate the inscriptio for the title of Matthew. We know that is incorrect. You can't reduce it to the 2nd century because it's paleographic dating. Dr. Brent Nungui, in his magnificent new book, God's Library, goes into this into detail, and it demonstrates that the early New Testament papyri cannot reliably be dated to the 2nd century, but to the 3rd and 4th. So it's very simple. He even does this with our P75 and Codex Vaticanus. So if you're going to quote Simon Gatacol, you need to be acquainted with the opposing opinions. I told this to Keith himself, and he was not able to understand it. He replied to me, there are actually other opinions. He doesn't know the competing opinions, so don't appeal to him. Secondly, you said that Bart Ehrman accepts Galatians 1:18. I don't care what Bart Ehrman says or doesn't say. I care about the evidence. Bart Ehrman says Jesus is not God. Are you going to worship him God now? Are you going to stop worshipping Jesus as God because Batman says otherwise? You said the oral creed passed down to Paul. Again, I put it forward to you. If you accept the science of philology, the only conclusion you can come to is that it was different from Paul. Whether it's earlier or later is a polemical argument. You need to demonstrate that it's later, it's earlier, and you need to explain why. The scholars say that it's earlier only because the language in it is very primitive. But we know that not to be the case because they're what we call anacoluton in the New Testament, like Revelation chapter 1 verse 4. They have incomplete primitive language, and the scholars agree that, you know what, it's incomplete. So if you're going to use the science of philology to bring arguments to conclusions, you need to understand the science first. Otherwise you're just appealing to authorities that you don't understand.
20 seconds.
Right. You didn't get back to my point on, let me read for you what Eusebius says. The same writer gives also other accounts which he says came to him through unwritten tradition, certain strange parables and teachings of the Savior, and some other mythical things. I don't say that, Eusebius. No, Paul.
Eusebius says that about who?
Papias.
Let's have a look.
Where's 1.3 seconds over.
He says more, go down to 13 as well. And he also says he was appears to have limited understanding. That's what he's talking about.
I'm telling you that we didn't copy your book. Because your book.
Can I just read that 1 second?
Okay. Just don't check my pictures. It's a joke, but people can laugh, you know.
You know what's good?
I'm handsome.
You email him your questions, he emails you his answers, then you have your debate.
No. What time do we want to leave?
How long much more we can eat?
Because
he's going to go anyway, so he's going to finish soon.
I'm on so many church notes, so I'm just saying.
Somebody what? You're all on microphone attached to you.
Medicinal.
I'll have to check that.
Okay, right. But okay. Do you want to respond to me? I mean, do you remember the points I made?
Go on, tell them quickly your points.
Who started first and who started?
You started first.
So does that mean you have to end?
I could end. I would rather. So
we'll leave it at there for now because I've got a bus to catch.
Can I just give you one quote then? One quote. Can I just give you one quote? I just want to hear your response to it, right? It's on my website. Hold on. All right. So guys, I'm reading from Eusebius, right? And he's writing in his work, The Preparation for the Gospel, Book 12, Chapter 31. This is what he says, that it will be necessary sometimes to use falsehood as a remedy for the benefit of those who require such a mode of treatment. And when he goes on to about the Gospels, he says, but even if the case were not such, as our argument has not proved it to be, if a lawgiver who is to be of ever so little use could have ventured to tell any falsehood at all to the young for their good, is there any falsehood that he could have told more beneficial than this, referring to the gospel, and better able to make them do everything that is just, not by compulsion but willingly? So the Greek, according to this, he's saying that it's okay to have useful lies.
Who says?
Eusebius. Eusebius says okay to have.
Eusebius says okay.
For the preparation of the Gospels, the title of that book, the title of the chapter is that it will be necessary sometimes to use falsehood as a remedy for the benefit of those who require it.
Can you respond just to that?
I'll just read, because he made the same point and Thompson addressed it. Let me read this. This is from his article. Ahmed's final argument is a distortion of the words of the 3rd and 4th century historian Eusebius. Ahmed claims Eusebius appeals to Plato to endorse lying and falsehood. However, Professor Mike Lycona and Professor Gary Habermas have already refuted a misuse of this quotation in a lengthy discussion. Eusebius merely affirmed it is okay for God to use anthropomorphic language if it is result in the benefit of humanity. Well, the Quran uses anthropomorphic language for Allah as well. Does Allah really believe has little hands and a little throne encompassing the heavens and the earth? Or will Ahmed affirm Quran chapter 42 verse 11, which says nothing is truly like Allah, and therefore take these as symbolically? He needs to be consistent and condemn the Quran if he's going to condemn Eusebius and the Bible for permitting anthropomorphic language. If you carefully read the Eusebius quote in question, Plato did not even encourage lying. Lycona and Habermas correctly summarized. All he said was he believes he is still correct in his belief, but even if his belief is still expedient. And all all Eusebius said was the Hebrew writers had attributed human qualities to God to explain why we should not worship other gods, and the reason behind this. Even in the very quote Ahmed cited, those are commended, and truth, O stranger, is a noble and a... So basically, when the Bible talks about God having wings, that in a sense it is a lie, because God doesn't have wings, but it's a metaphorical way, and this is what Eusebius is talking about.
You finished?
I actually have to go.
Okay, hold on. Let me use that 30 seconds, right? So I knew about that quote, and let me tell you how Gary Habermas and Michael O'Connor translate that term. This is quote for quote. It may be helpful to look at the Greek employed. The word used by Plato is pseudos, which typically means a lie or imitation. Let me go on. He says, however, Plato's context, so now this is Habermas and O'Connor, and the passage may justify a nuance for the following reasons. One, Plato uses the term good lie, eliminating harmful intent. So it's still a lie, it's just a good one. And not finished, he continues, one translator renders the term as useful fiction instead of falsehood.
Fiction. So let me give an Islamic example. When the Prophet Muhammad said Allah has two right hands, I believe that Muslims are intelligent people and they don't believe God has literally right hands. But he's using a useful lie.
A language device is not
using a language device, and this is what the...
A language device is not a lie.
What Eusebius is talking. Anyways,
hold on.
Genuinely,
so I'll just make the point.
This is not about lying, about to deceive people.
Hold on.
It's about
You made a mistake. You made a mistake. The mistake is, hold on. Right. The mistake is that it's not about describing God. It's about fiction within the Gospels that have nothing to do with the nature of God. It's useful to lie once it brings you to the conclusion.
Talking about just the anthropomorphic attributes of saying God has wings. Obviously, God doesn't have wings, so in that sense, it is a lie, but still just a metaphorical device.
Right. So a language device. So a lie is a language device.
In one sense, yes. That's what.
That's all. Right, thank you.
Conclusion?
Right. Conclusion. Right, I guess people want conclusions. Okay. I want to thank whatever his name was. I don't even know. Right, this one. Are you EF Dawa?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, right. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. Right. So, right. Just to conclude it, right? Guys. Let me finish. Right. Really quickly. Plato uses the word agato sudestai. He refers to false gods and anthropomorphic language. That is correct. But when it comes to the New Testament use, it's different, because we understand the distinction between a metaphor as a language device and a lie. We all can discern between the two. So the way in which Eusebius uses it is different from the way in which Plato uses it. And this is what Habermas and Lycona record, that the meaning is still useful fiction. That is the point. We're not talking about the nature of God. They're also speaking about the Gospels itself and the details within them. Myths and fictions, lies and imitations. I don't say that. Habermas and Lycona did. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
So in terms of